they will follow up, they'll send an email, they'll send a letter, but they don't really keep coming back nagging. Hey, you know, now it's June and we still haven't gotten this information from you. Don't you want to, you know, be considered for a state grant? They'll notify you about 2 times, I would say. And if you don't ever answer those questions, you're not going to be considered, or your son or daughter would not be considered for funding from them. And again, it's just a shame to walk away from a fairly large source of free gift aid. So I always kind of, well, I guess lecture, especially first-time students and families, to say, hey, just keep in mind, if you're a Pennsylvania resident, make sure you do that, okay? If you're eligible for the state grant, FIA will notify you, typically that second or third week in May is when they like to go out and send actual letters to the home saying, congratulations, you've been awarded X number of dollars. Now, we're anticipating that the maximum grant for this year is going to be about $3,400. Now that's for Clarion. That's a state school, like, well, Clarion, Slippery Rock, etc. If you were also considering a more expensive private school, the FIA grant could be higher only because their cost of attendance is so much higher. Unlike the federal aid, which really doesn't fluctuate from college to college, FIA does have, if you go to a community college, you get much less because their costs are less, okay, to give you an idea. So they'll send you those notices in May. When you fill out the FAFSA, and those of you who've already done it will probably be able to say, yes, that's what we saw. The federal government's gotten much more user-friendly, believe it or not. They're literally telling you if you qualify for the Pell Grant, they tell you what your expected family contribution is as well, okay? They usually after that say contact your school to find out what this means. You know, it appears you're eligible for the Pell Grant. I don't know that they're still giving you a dollar amount. They didn't last year. I don't think they're doing that yet still. The whole purpose really of filling out that FAFSA form is to get what's called an EFC, Expected Family Contribution. The EFC is not what you're literally going to end up paying out of pocket. And I think sometimes folks take it as such. And it can create a great deal of angst, shall we say, because you're like, wait a minute, I went to that session and I listened to those people. They seemed like they knew what they were talking about. They told me to fill out this form that I could get money, and now I'm being told, congratulations, your expected family contribution is $63,000. Are you smoking something? I cannot, well, I could write you a check for 63, it's gonna bounce, but hey, I can write you a check. It does not mean that that's what you have to pay, okay? And even if it came back that your expected family contribution was a 6-digit figure, it doesn't mean that you don't qualify for anything. It definitely means you don't qualify for any federal or state grants or any need-based financial aid, but there are self-help forms and the types of loans that we'll talk about in a few minutes. There's obviously academic merit-based scholarships as well, okay? And if it comes back saying that your expected family contribution is 0, it doesn't mean this is fantastic, it's free, we're not gonna have to pay anything. Let's go on vacation, we don't need to use the college savings. No, it doesn't mean that either. 0 expected family contribution, and there are quite a few number of families that have that come through once they do the calculation. Multiple people in school, in college at the same time, a large family size, limited taxable income, that can give you a 0 EFC. It just means somebody who's on that end of the spectrum is going to have maximum eligibility for the federal and the state programs. The FIA program that we spoke of, also there is the federal Pell Grant. Some of you are maybe familiar with that. If you've had other children that went through the process of applying for aid, you may have qualified for it. Pell it is the largest grant-funded program out there. It is federal, comes from Uncle Sam. They've been able to continue to increase it every year, which is really amazing in this day and age. This year it's going to be, if you had a 0 expected family contribution, $5,775, $57.75. That's a chunk of money for 1 year, okay? Now that's maximum. If you barely qualify for the federal Pell Grant and you're getting the minimum, you're probably talking about $600. So that's a pretty big, that's a pretty big span from $5,700 to $600, and you can fall anywhere between those two extremes Or you could be one of the families that's told, we're glad you filled out the FAFSA, but we can't give you any, it does not appear that you're eligible for this grant. And I don't want you to think that it was a waste of your time. It's not. There are a lot of other programs still need-based that are out there that you could qualify for. It's just not necessarily Pell. A lot of families will say, well, come on, just tell me the secret formula. You know, at what point am I going to be like, oh, okay, I know for sure if we are above that dollar amount, there's no way we're getting a Pell Grant. And again, I gotta tell you, we're dealing with Uncle Sam, the federal government. They don't disclose that even to the schools, even to the aid offices. In general, I would say a family size of 4 with only one person in the family in college, if the adjusted gross income is $48,000 or higher, you're probably not looking at a Pell Grant, unless there are some other extenuating circumstances. I will tell you, when you fill out the FAFSA, believe it or not, one of the things that helps lower the expected family contribution is the age of the oldest parent. This is definitely not a time when you want to lie about your age. I mean, I've told people I have no idea what they think I am. But I know it's one of the things you want to make sure you get accurate and you take the credit if you are. I'm older than my husband, so it'll be me that gets us, maybe, a little bit more money when my son goes to college. It's not a good time to lie about your age. So make sure they're using accurate birth dates for parents. Another thing when filling out the FAFSA, please make sure, sometimes, especially with sons, you may call them by their middle name because you gave them the same first name as their grandfather or their father. You have to make sure when you fill out the FAFSA that the names you're using are exactly what is on your Social Security cards, because unfortunately to the feds, we are all number, really not a name. And it really throws them off, and they start thinking we're perhaps not legal citizens of the United States of America if something doesn't match. Same with parents. If you never legally changed your maiden name to your married name, again, make sure you're using the name as it appears on your Social Security card. So just a side note there. If you have filled out your FAFSA starting March, mid-March, so that's next, I keep saying it like that's so far down the road, and I just realized I'm calendar challenged, that's next month, and this month's almost over. Starting next month, the middle to end, we will be sending out from Clarion estimated financial aid award letters, okay? The purpose of sending the actual paper letter, and this is the only time your son or daughter will get a paper award notice. We typically notify through Clarion University email. They're told early on, actually they probably already got that blue sheet that gives them their login to utilize, and an email address, that's the official means of communication here at the university. So we don't do a whole lot of mailings, okay? It's usually electronic. We will send this paper estimated award letter starting in mid-March as the FAFSA form and FAFSA information is received in our office. It will include basically like a little Excel, it's an embedded Excel spreadsheet almost, of any financial aid that we are aware that we can give to him or to her. In other words, Clarion scholarships that we're aware of would be included in that estimated award letter, as well as a Pell Grant if he or she is eligible, an estimated FIA grant. FIA always reserves the right to notify you of the actual award in May. So we give an estimate that they provide to us, usually, not always, but usually, unless they find errors or they change, you change something on your FAFSA, their actual amount comes in just a little bit higher. I think they like that so that you're pleased, as opposed to where did my $100 go. It'll have an estimated state grant if you're a Pennsylvania resident, and then I will tell you up front, we automatically put in $5,500 for a freshman level Stafford loan, okay? It doesn't mean you have to take it out, because you see that in the estimated award letter, $5,500. If the student shows financial need at all, up to the first $3,500 of that $5,500 award will actually be interest-free or subsidized while he or she is enrolled, okay? The subsidy means that the feds are not charging